Pixel art back in the day was defined by hardware and software limitations. Nintendo pixel art was no different. If I want to make pixel art that doesn't look cheap or amateurish and that feels authentic to retro Nintendo, then I need to embrace these 4 limitations, or at least invoke them. Because with them, not only will I make pixel art that feels authentic, that feeling of authenticity will come about on its own. But that's very different from making my pixel art look good. How do I do that as well? Well, that's exactly what I did for my game. Okay, I just want a grass tile, so I'm just gonna put the grass tile, that's the grass tile too, right there. And maybe a little character, and there we go. Absolutely not. I want that authentic Nintendo feel, you know what I'm saying? I want Samus's pixely little ass rendered on the screen, you know what I'm saying? Let's talk limitations for the NES and a little bit for the Game Boy Color. The first thing you may already know is that the blockiness of the games are because they're tile drawn, as in all the graphics are assembled by frotaging the tiles. Everything's a mosaic. What you may not know is that in January of 2000, a worker at a sewage treatment plant in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, discovered half of a human brain inside a catch basin. Authorities determined that it had not been there long and that it had not come from a hospital or a research lab. No DNA match has been found to this day. And also that tiles are actually 8x8 blocks of pixels, not 16x16. Early NES games had to fit the entirety of their graphics onto the small-ass canvas here. The grid shows the amount of tiles you can fit into that space. You're essentially creating a set of building blocks for yourself, but you have a limit to how many you can create. Later into the NES's life cycle, technology progressed, and cartridges had more space, so this canvas expanded as well. Also, the NES had cool built-in features to help with this. For one, you could flip and rotate tiles to assemble bigger tiles. With just this one 8x8 tile, I can create a 16x16 circle. Watch.
Flipu, 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 wow.
That's why Blue does a sweet little emo hair flip during his walk cycle. The NES had only 64 colors to choose from. 8 of them were just black. I'm going to categorize black and white as a color for the sake of talking about an electronic palette, sue me. Stricter still is that not all of these colors will make it into the game. You had to define the game's palettes, which is essentially a set of 4 colors. 4 times 8, that's 32, baby. Wrong! 4 of those palettes belong to tiles, and 4 of those palettes belong to sprites. Sprites automatically had a transparency color taking up their slot. So in reality, you only had 28 colors max. I hope you really like those colors. Each tile, like I said before, has the benefit of being able to switch between palettes. But keep in mind, it cannot have colors from multiple palettes. It can only be colored in from one palette at a time. This allows for famous examples, like in the case of Super Mario Bros. 1, where the clouds and the bushes are the same. Same with the lava and the water. Another semi-recent example of this is with Alex Jones. So, with limits such as tiling, color, palette, and graphical memory, not only will I create something that feels Nintendo authentic, that's just how it's going to turn out. So the limits that I'm going to implement in my game are that I have 128 colors with 10 palettes each, 5 colors to each palette. That's all fine and dandy, but how do you make something like this look good? Well, lucky for me, early pixel artists have developed ways to make tile-drawn graphics with a limited palette look good as well. Okay, so I'm finally going to start with that grass tile. The grass tile is always harder than it seems. You basically pick one shade of green, then, using another shade of green, you draw lines that trend upwards but can have a bend. And then you keep trying to do that until you get frustrated and take the grass tile from the other project that for some reason you could get right on the second try. And don't tell anyone I did this, please. Okay, so here's some sweet tech. If you're ever having trouble drawing a tile, what you can do is make the border tiles have the texture and make the middle tiles have one flat color. In fact, I'm going to do something similar to the water tile. So right now it's just this indigo color, right? And I put them right next to the grass tiles and it looks kind of garbage. But when I use these edge tiles here, it's suddenly looking more like a river. Just a few more touches and you'll get the full picture. What if I added this? Okay. What about this? A few modifications and I don't have to add edge tiles for the grass. But why all this black? That is another beautiful trick up the NES pixel artist's sleeve. Games that took place in dark environments tended to look better than games that took place in brighter environments. Harsh shadows lent visual ambiguity to the scene, so the cops couldn't see what I was handing to those lost-looking elderly people. The need to make transition tiles isn't so great in the dark, and tiling for connectivity isn't such a high priority anymore, because now you have shadows to blend the borders between tiles. That meant you could spend more graphical memory on adding detail to tiles. tiles. So I'm going to use black to connect two palettes that otherwise don't connect very well. The grass water palette and the dirt rock palette. You can do the same with tiles that belong to palettes that have one or more similar colors within them. And just like that, Vilma, we have a seamless transition between one tile and the other. Because of the black color, there's the illusion that the rock tile is extending past the tile boundary. These corners, depending on how much graphical space I have left, may be left as is, but that should be... Oh no. Okay, here's another technique. Tiles that double as edge and middle tiles. I don't want to have to make two new tiles to smooth out the edges here. I'm a lazy, no-job-having pixel artist. Instead, I can have the edges of the tile itself transition smoothly into either copies of itself or the edge of the grass tiles. I can do that by making the blades of grass on the sides longer. See? One tile for the corner and the middles. For this to work, I also had to change the water side tile because it created too much of a boundary. Contra does this in its first level. Notice how the ground pillars can work as either cliff faces and as just another section of the ground. Now what about these little corners here? Done. I can even keep the rock part black and it still works visually. What about these top corners? They're just water tiles. What about the trees? What is a grassland tile set without trees? But I don't have enough colors. I could use black as a shadow, but then the grading between the two greens would be all messed up. It'll be all uneven. Just one huge jump. And if I make another palette for trees, then I only have two more palettes for everything else that is in grassland, like houses, castles, decor, the fun hole, beaches, and so many other locations and objects. What if I did this? Okay, ignore that. What if I did that? Notice anything? I used the darkest shade of green I had. That means all the tiles I made before that use this palette will have to have this green instead of the black. And guess what? It still works, baby! Now the palette can accommodate trees. Okay, I'm about to reveal something to you. The contrast still sucks. I tried turning down the brightness and I got this sad, rainy looking thing. My game don't take place in British. That's when I realized I was doing this whole thing wrong. Instead of trying to lessen the contrast, I have to embrace it. See, most people who start out doing pixel art start with an unlimited palette because, you know, we have modern technology. The first mistake they usually make is that when choosing a palette, they have too many colors. One of the results of this is that true contrast is never really achieved. Instead, I made the bright color even brighter. And guess what? I can also have the trees stacked behind each other and it still works. Next, I can fucking murder these two middle tiles and this third top tile. Why? Because I can copy and paste these two. But what about top tile? Well, if I take this left tile, flip it, then rotate it. See? Y'all want a bush? Here's a bush. I can even use these tiles to make hedges. That's another trick. A tile meant to look like one object can be used to make another object. Look at this scene from Open Game Art. This bush tile is basically the branch tile, but flipped. If this scene took place during the day, this would not work as well. You may think I'm doing all this corner cutting to be lazy, but that's not true. Doing pixel art on public transit is harder than it looks. But also, this is done in the spirit of saving memory, rather than the necessity of it. And now I can make room for other stuff, like overlaying the corners with a rock face, the water, a body, or maybe even a building. But what about the sprites? Well, if they're your main characters, you might start with a video about shape language for character design.
Upward triangle can feel bottom-heavy, hopeful, and positive,
triangle,
and the downward one can squares represent the quality of shape language denoting stay stoic, identical, hard, heroic, and the amount of not ultimately or
here's the
docile
result of that
cuteness,
rigid
but
education.
latent
But you might be asking me, hey Caidyn, why in Bertha's big bosom would I be using shape language for sketches when there's no way I can fit all those ideas into sprites? Because they're main characters. Having a complete sketch will help you to define them in other ways than just their sprites. What about their portraits? What about their walk cycles? Also, I can still use the language of color. All royalty will wear purples and violets because those colors have historically been seen as royal colors. You couldn't find that stuff at the dollar store? Go ahead. Go back to medieval Europe, see if you can find yourself a dollar store. You can't, idiot. And so, I drew the queen herself, who, as you know, will be thrown out of her station near the very beginning. So she'll have two outfits just for the occasion. A true leader is prepared for anything or some garbage. Here's another quick tip. If I'm doing animations or walking cycles, I'll usually log on to Piskel and I'll check there to see if the walk cycle actually works. It's free, it's online, and it's cool. Watch out, Uncle Dad and Bigsby Nippleton, because regal, majestic, commanding, incompetent. Her name is Heyo, don't forget about me, I'm here too, to tell you that there are 2 buttons just below this here video that want you to click them. There's a little comment box that wants you to clickety-clack in it, and there's a share button that wants you to link this video to personal data farming sites. Let's game this little algorithm. Woo. Esmeralda. Oh, I forgot about the whipping boy. Damn, seems that guy's always getting forgotten. Ta-da, there's David, looking all put upon. Okay, so I made a little bit of an oopsie, a bit of a poopsie, you know, some cowpat. I made these portraits 40 by 40 pixels, but they should be 32 by 32. I have 3 options. I can resize them, I can redraw them, or I can crop them. Scale it down, smooth it out, that's what I'm doing. Fuck it. Alright, see, it's all done. So the reason why Esmeralda's face is missing the right half is because she was getting a little uppity. Also, I can just fill it by flipping the left half. Can't do the same with David's, too asymmetrical. With all of this done and imported, it means that Uncle Dad and Bigsby Nippleton have to go. Godspeed, you precious bitches. You may have also noticed that I'm using the 40 by 40 version of the portraits. Turns out the game actually does accommodate 40 by 40 portraits, not 32 by 32. Oh well, hang on, let me move this pause menu out of the way. Right? Let me know if this is eye bleedy and I can turn down the saturation, but either way, I'm feeling pretty proud. This was a fun break from programming, but the next video, we're finishing the battle system by solving a common issue in turn-based RPGs to do with both items and equipment. Stay tuned to see what that is.